Direct flights from Hong Kong to Kazakhstan ready in first quarter of next year. Parents in Swedish custody dispute arrested in Hong Kong over unregistered baby. Scores killed and renewed Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Chief Executive John Lee says Hong Kong will launch direct flights to Kazakhstan in the first quarter of next year. The comment comes while Lee continues his first official visit in Kazakhstan. Mosinai reports.
On the second day of his Central Asia trip, Chief Executive John Lee met with representatives of Baitarak National Investment Holding in Kazakhstan's capital, Astana.
This meeting is really for mutual learning and good exchange of ideas and opinions.
Speaking to the media in Astana, the CE said the delegation has signed 43 memoranda of understanding. Lee revealed that a Hong Kong-based airline will operate direct flights to Kazakhstan's Almaty in the first quarter of 2027. Lee said the new route will provide a more convenient access for passengers to other destinations, including Eastern Europe and other parts of the Central Asia. Later in a statement, Cathay Pacific Airways says it will launch 3 flights every week between Hong Kong and Almaty starting early next year. Apart from establishing a new flight route, the CE says he's working with the Kazakh authorities to extend visa-free access for Hong Kong people visiting the country. While the existing visa-free period for Hong Kongers in Kazakhstan is 14 days, Lee hopes to expand it to 30, a goal that is shared by the two parties. On Wednesday, the CE will visit Astana's Nazarbayev University, where President Xi Jinping announced the initiative of the Belt and Road development in 2013.
We will be signing some MOUs. The Education University of Hong Kong and the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And they will be developing a working relationship with the Nazarbayev University to further expand the collaboration between the higher education institutions of the two places.
Lee will head to Uzbekistan later on Wednesday. News 9, TVB News.
Authorities have arrested 2 parents in Changsha on suspicion of child neglect after the couple, who claimed to have given birth at home, refused to provide proof of the baby's birth, resulting in their failure to acquire a birth certificate for over 2 months. The child has been sent to hospital for a health check. This as Secretary for Security Chris Tang criticized the pair for their refusal to submit the infant's records. The couple, surnamed Zhang and Kwan, earlier claimed online that they gave birth to their son Danny at home 2 months ago, but have been unable to acquire a birth certificate. This after the pair failed to fulfill the Immigration Department's requirement to provide proof of blood relations, such as a DNA testing report. The couple cited privacy reasons for their refusal. In an earlier interview, Ms. Kwan questioned whether doctors and immigration authorities will automatically confirm blood relations if the baby is born in a hospital. While Mr. Zhang said he will tell his son that his right to privacy needs to be protected. After several days of investigation, the police arrested the couple in Changsha this afternoon on suspicion of child neglect. Secretary for Security Chris Tang noted the pair still refused to provide relevant information. He stressed the case is unrelated to issues of privacy, as authorities are simply asking the parents to provide evidence of their relationship to the child. He emphasized it is reasonable to be suspicious of their claims of parenthood if the couple fails to provide records of a prenatal checkup or DNA test. The infant has been sent to hospital for a health check, with Social Welfare Department personnel having been sent to the hospital to check on the situation. Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun noted that authorities will handle the case in accordance with the law as well as emotional considerations. The couple once claimed in an online article of having given birth to 2 girls in Finland in 2021, before one of them died just a month later. The 2 were subsequently charged by Finnish authorities on suspicion of child neglect. They then moved to Sweden, where the remaining daughter was placed under a formal care order and given to a foster family. The Education Bureau apologizes after a technical issue leads to an incorrect release of Primary 1 allocation results. Some parents reported receiving a text message from the Bureau around 9 a.m. this morning. However, the text message mentioned the placement year as 2025, and in some cases, wrong school choices were displayed. The Bureau said parents should ignore the message, and the official results will be sent on Wednesday as scheduled. U.S. President Donald Trump says Israel and Hezbollah are agreeing to dial back fighting following communication with the respective leaders ahead of talks in Washington. This follows an Israeli attack near a Lebanese hospital. Meanwhile, the United Nations expresses concerns over Israel's increasingly hostile advances in Lebanon. Gloria Fung has the story.
Following mediation sessions with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, U.S. President Donald Trump says both parties agreed to dial back on the violence. It is reported that Trump erupted on Netanyahu in a profanity-laced call over Israel's latest incursion. Trump says no Israeli troops will be going to Beirut, and any troops that are on their way have already been turned back. He further states that Hezbollah has also agreed that all shooting will stop, that Israel will not attack them, and they will not attack Israel. Confirming the conversation, Netanyahu, however, cast uncertainty on the agreement, saying he would retaliate on targets in Beirut if Hezbollah's attack do not stop, and the Israeli military will continue to operate as planned in southern Lebanon. There was no immediate word from Hezbollah. This latest agreement comes ahead of talks between Israel and Lebanon scheduled for Tuesday and Wednesday in Washington, where Lebanese negotiators hope to widen the scope of areas that will not be attacked in the country as they seek a complete ceasefire. As negotiations are underway, attacks continued on Monday. An Israeli airstrike brought heavy damage near a hospital in the Lebanese port of Tyre, injuring at least 13, sources at the UN say. The Lebanese Health Ministry released footage showing frightened women and children inside the hospital where windows have been blown out. In Israel, mourners gather at the funeral of 26 soldiers and 2 civilians who were recently killed in a drone attack in Lebanon and in northern Israel. School has been cancelled and large gatherings limited for those living along the northern Israeli border due to concerns over the threat of Hezbollah projectiles. UN spokesperson for the Secretary General, Stefan Dujarric, says the violence is deeply alarming, condemning recent Israeli attacks on Lebanon. He goes on to say both sides must give peace a chance at the upcoming talks in Washington.
We urge all actors to respect the cessation of hostilities and avoid further escalation. We condemn all the loss of civilian lives. There is no alternative to a diplomatic solution to break this cycle of violence and to achieve sustainable stability on both sides of the blue line. The U.S.-sponsored Lebanon-Israel negotiations resuming tomorrow must be given a real chance to succeed.
Gloria Fung, TVB News.
United States President Donald Trump says he believes an agreement with Iran to extend the ceasefire and reopen the Strait of Hormuz will come over the next week. Trump says he has not agreed to the Memorandum of Understanding yet, and that it's not an easy thing for the two countries to come to an understanding. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, Esmail Baghaei, says Israel's attack on Lebanon is sabotaging ongoing diplomatic efforts between Iran and U.S. to end the war across the region. In the same video briefing, Baghaei accuses the U.S. of violating ceasefire after attacks on Iranian radar and drone sites. Baghaei also reiterates Iran's stance on collecting tolls for the Strait of Hormuz. Russian drones and missiles pounded the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, and other cities early on Tuesday. Ukrainian authorities said at least 11 people were killed and more than 100 wounded. It comes after the Kremlin warned it intended systematic strikes on targets in Kiev in response to a drone attack on a dormitory in Ukraine's Russian-held region of Luhansk, which killed 21. Ukraine denied that attack. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Ukraine's Air Force said Russia launched 656 drones and 73 missiles overnight, mainly targeting Kyiv. The Ukrainian Air Force said 40 missiles and 602 drones had been downed or neutralized. An Air Force spokesman said the attack included 8 Zircon hypersonic missiles, likely the largest number of those missiles used by Russia during the war. The Zircon has a range of 1,000 kilometers and travels at 9 times the speed of sound, according to Moscow. Russia's defense ministry said it had carried out a massive strike on Ukraine's defense industry facilities using high-precision long-range weapons. 7 people were killed and 36 injured in a missile and drone attack on the southeastern city of Dnipro and its surroundings. In Ukraine's northeastern region of Kharkiv, a child was among the 10 people injured in drone and missile attacks. Russian regions also came under attack. The Elsky oil refinery in the southern Russian region of Krasnodar caught fire after a drone attack. The barrage comes after the Kremlin warned it intended systematic strikes on targets in Kyiv in response to a drone attack on a dormitory in Ukraine's Russian-held region of Lugansk, which killed 21. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said between January and May of this year, Ukraine struck 15 Russian oil refineries. Zelensky said as of May, nearly 40% of Russia's primary oil refining capacity is offline. He said for a country that until very recently was called a gas station, losing even this is a major event, a major loss. He added Ukraine's military now had the capability to reach Russian targets in virtually the entire depth of the temporarily occupied territory. Dan Rahul, TV News.
And still ahead, Blue Origin launchpad not operational until 2028 after earlier rocket explosion. Protests in Kenya over planned U.S. Ebola quarantine facilities. Court says it cannot postpone Wang Fuk court owners' meeting as per management company's request. Welcome back. The launch pad damaged in the recent explosion of Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket during an engine test may not be restored until 2028. This according to a NASA spokesperson on Monday. The facility at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station is currently the only operational launch pad capable of supporting Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket. Blue Origin CEO Dave Limp says the company will start clearing the pad soon and will have a good rebuild plan in place. The explosion could affect the schedule of some NASA lunar exploration missions, as Blue Origin is a key commercial partner in NASA's Artemis Moon program. Britain's government released reams of documents relating to the appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the U.S. The Mandelson saga, which forced the departure of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's closest aide, has become a focus for criticism of Britain's leader. The British government hopes the documents will show Mandelson was less than frank over his ties to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. In one document, the government said it had written to Mandelson to request any information held on his personal phone as part of an investigation into his appointment and work, something he had declined to hand over. Private messages from Mandelson show him criticizing Starmer's leadership skills. Mandelson is under police investigation for allegedly leaking government documents to the late Epstein. Starmer faces a possible leadership challenge later this year if his main rival, Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, wins a seat in Parliament in an election on June 18th. Foreign Minister Wang Yi holds the 11th China-UK strategic dialogue with UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, who is in China for 3 days for an official visit. The diplomats engaged in in-depth exchanges on implementing the important consensus reached by leaders of the two countries on expanded pragmatic cooperation. Danny Zhou has the story.
Cooper's China tour follows Keir Starmer's visit to the country early in January, the first by a UK Prime Minister since 2018. At the time, the leaders agreed to develop a long-term and consistent comprehensive strategic partnership. During Tuesday's dialogue, Wang Yi extended hope the British side will provide Chinese enterprises with a fair, just and non-discriminatory business environment. He told Cooper Beijing expects the two sides can work together to foster a sound atmosphere for the development of China-UK ties and the deepening of practical cooperation. Vice President Han Zheng says in a separate meeting with Cooper that improving bilateral ties serves the interests of the two peoples, and both countries should practice true multilateralism in a bid to advance global governance reform and bring greater stability and certainty to the world. Cooper states the UK and China have broad common interests and cooperation potential in trade and investment, AI, green development, among others, while conveying readiness to engage in constructive dialogue and jointly address challenges. Media reports say the British Foreign Secretary will head to China's southern tech hub of Shenzhen on Wednesday for a program focused on science and technology. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Hundreds of Kenyan youths waged fierce protests against plans for a quarantine and treatment center in central Kenya, intended to house American citizens exposed to Ebola, instead of flying them home. This as the Democratic Republic of the Congo reports close to 300 confirmed cases, including 42 deaths, of the Bundibugyo virus, a rare strain of Ebola which has no approved treatment or vaccine. Danny Jo again.
Last week, the High Court of Kenya ordered the government to temporarily suspend the plan of setting up the quarantine facility at an Air Force base in the town of Nanyuki in Laikipia County, citing public health risks. Kenya's health minister comes to the defense of the move, saying it's part of a wider push to strengthen emergency response systems. Military jets are seen flying in and out of Nanyuki recently in what appears to be the ongoing U.S. preparations for the proposed 50-bed unit, despite the court ruling. Chaos rocked the streets on Monday as hundreds of residents and local leaders held up signs and chanted slogans outside the airbase in protest against what they describe as inconsiderate deal. Many argue their health system will be too fragile to handle the arrival of foreign patients.
They said this is an institution or it's a quarantine facility for only the Americans. So the Americans are selfish to the core. And we have to tell Americans to get off our noses business. Get off our business. Get off our skin.
We are saddened today, such a bad morning, knowing that we have in the Laikipia Air Base compound, we have a primary school with retro kids over there.
Kenyan President William Ruto told reporters later in the day that the quarantine center would serve Kenyans as well as foreign partners, including Americans, if needed. Dismissing criticism of the plan, Ruto noted Kenya would provide isolation, surveillance and treatment facilities in 23 counties, emphasizing they have a duty to prepare for any potential Ebola infections, although Kenya has not recorded cases so far. According to a statement by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the U.S. government will commit $13.5 million towards Kenya's Ebola preparedness efforts. Meanwhile, Beijing vows to provide emergency humanitarian assistance to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian says 45 Chinese medical teams with a total of over 900 members are sent to 44 African countries. He adds that Beijing is engaged in communication with African Union on Ebola prevention and control and calls on concrete measures from the international community to help the DR Congo and other African nations contain the outbreak at an early date. Danny Jo, TVB News.
The Lands Tribunal has rejected Hop-On Management's bid to extend a deadline for holding a homeowner meeting. Hop-On is the government-appointed administrator for Tai Po Wang Fuk Court after the November fire. In its ruling, the Lands Tribunal says the court has no jurisdiction to make such a decision under the building's management ordinance. Hop-On earlier applied to the tribunal to delay the June 13th deadline for holding an owners' meeting, saying it would be challenging for them to secure a venue for more than 1,000 people. Retail sales in April is provisionally estimated at $31.4 billion, an increase of 8.6% when compared to the same month in 2025. For the first 4 months of 2026, total retail sales increased by 11.3%. Of the total retail sales value in April, online sales was up 30.6% year-on-year. Sales of motor vehicles and parts surged 46%, while electrical goods and consumer durable goods rose 21.9%. Looking ahead, a government spokesman said the retail sector should continue to benefit from the ongoing economic expansion, with notable increase in inbound visitors and resilient consumption sentiment. Hong Kong is in the process of preparing its own 5-year plan for the first time. Several experts that previously participated in the mainland's formulation of the 5-year plans says such experience could contribute to Hong Kong's own initiative. Lawmaker Hui Simon Lee is no stranger to the 5-year plan concept, having served as a chief strategy officer for a state enterprise where he drafted previous 5-year plans over the past 15 years. Lee suggests Hong Kong authorities can look into the mainland's process of drafting its plans, such as highlighting the city's strategic direction and how to better jointly coordinate its initiative with the mainland. He believes Hong Kong also needs to learn from the mainland's efforts on the plan's practical implementation. He stresses there should be clear indicators on implementing the core aspects of the initiative, adding they should fulfill relevant government requirements. Academic Liang Haiming, meanwhile, assisted Hainan's provincial government over a decade ago in drafting parts of its 5-year plan. He describes his experience as super advanced preparation. He says it is necessary to be aware of certain terms related to regional development, such as the latest national 5-year plan calling for regional cooperation between cities. Liang says Hong Kong can collaborate with other cities in the Greater Bay Area to jointly develop industries including big data, AI, and biotechnology. The academic says the 5-year plan should be close to the people, such as allowing residents to know what is the plan for economic growth and what is the increase in hospital facilities. As public consultation on the Hong Kong 5-year plan will soon start, academics suggest the government should provide online platforms for residents to express their views. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.